to the Patch End podcast. This is episode, I think 7. I don't do it too frequently. I do it when I have someone that I want to talk to pretty badly, and I have my buddy Russell Nohelty here. What's up, man?
What's up, man? I think this is going to be the longest chat we've ever had at one time, and I'm super excited for it.
It could be because we did early in knowing you, we did your podcast, which that was what, like 45 minutes?
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, maybe it's equal to that. It'll be
Maybe.
right around that time. But we know so much more about each other now, and still have yet to sit down and have a long-term discussion. So I'm super excited to.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. We I really wanted to try to talk to you a bit more in San Diego, but I was there so brief,
Yeah.
Convention season's hard. Yeah, it's big, and I only did I did 2 days at the show, and I kind of learned my lesson. Next year it has to be the full Monty. It's not a show that you really condense into 2 days. Even it was not well attended this year, but it still felt like a marathon kind of shoved into a short weekend.
Yeah, I felt like even I was there 5 days because it was behind the table. Like, I feel like I really hampered myself, honestly. Like, I don't think I'm going to table at San Diego next year because I couldn't talk to any of the publishers that I wanted to talk to. I didn't want to. I couldn't talk to. I mean, you've been at this place for a long time where like you're working with publishers, but I feel like I just got to that place where like I know all the publishers, I know all the editors. Either they're like, from years ago, I knew them and they came up as editors, or like or like Dave, Dave Franchetti from Zenescope, right? It's like,
oh, for sure, Dave's my man. Yeah,
it's like I knew him when he was running booths for Zenescope, and now he's like the editor-in-chief, grand poobah of the whole thing. And I'm like, man, it'd been nice to like sit down and chit chat with him, or like talk to him about like stuff that's happening. And I think that like I have for my entire career been more focused on the day to like the immediate sale, like how do I make $20 from the person in front of me, than like how to make $100,000 from like the publisher who's going to like be paying my bills for the next 10 years. And this is the first show that I've done that I really felt like, wow, I think I really shot myself in the foot by being behind my table all the time, because I literally couldn't do a third of the things that I even wanted to do.
That's really interesting to me. Yeah, because I in the past when I have a booth and I do go to publishers and have those conversations, I am of two minds. I'm like, wow, I probably missed so many sales, and when I don't get something that feels concrete, I feel like I've messed up. But what you said, it could be true too. There could be so much time spent on sales that you kind of miss long-term opportunities. But no, I mean, you're right. Dave, when I was at Zenescope, he was the sales guy, and I remember he was working on a few pitches. He had this idea for Thumbelina that Raven, Gregory, and I both gave notes on. And we did see him really go from sales to head of sales who writes occasionally, to now he is the grand Zenescope poobah.
Yeah. And I remember his first, I saw him at a show and he's like, Russell, come here. And he showed me the first issue he ever like got a writing credit on. So like, I remember like and that's not the only one. And I do think that I've been telling people a lot recently, because I've been reflecting. I'm about to turn 40. And so I'm like kind of reflecting on my career. And I'm like, there's a part of this work that is just time. Like you can't substitute it. Like you literally, like on some level, people will respond to your work just because you have a lot of it. And eventually they'll be like, I got to try him. I've seen him for 10 years or whatever the number is. And like people will give you opportunities. And more importantly, like, I feel like I'm on my third wave of publishers. Like when I was coming up, like Zenescope was just like getting established, and like, that then they became established, and there was a whole nother round of like scouts and source point presses that like crested and like came up. And now I'm on like the mad cave, like the third level of the of those companies. And I feel like those are the companies that I'm getting the coolest opportunities with now, because like either they went up, they grew up reading my work, or they grew up like knowing of my work, or maybe they listened to me like on my old show or something like that, and they all want to work with me. Like, so it's been a really interesting transition from like the old guard of like Dark Horse, who are like, I don't want anything to do with you, Russell. I'm sorry. Like, we're way too big. We've been around since the 90s, to like companies that I came up with. And it's like, I don't want to work with you. Like, I saw you get drunk and like do really stupid stuff. And that now it's like, oh, companies that like just are on the come up, that like are past all of that. It's been really interesting. Like, there's just no substitute for the length of time you're doing this, because in order to see 3 waves of publishers come through, there just had to be time. Like, there's no substitute for it.
That is true. I have now that I think about it, you know, there are publishers that I have in mind now who weren't a thing just a few years ago, and publishers that I was working with that I work with no longer because they are no longer. You know, there's one major publisher that I did a decent portion of my work with, who they're not out of business, but they are not actively publishing, and one that is just gone, dude. So yeah, no, that's such an interesting and unique part of being in comics for so long. How many years do you have?
Well, I did my first pitch in 2010, so like 12 years. That was my first Comic-Con. My first book was published 2012, so yeah, like 12, like a decade. And like, yeah, that publisher's gone. Like, the next round of publishers gone, and a lot of people who rejected that first pitch are like good friends of mine now. And and they're like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, you were right. Like, you were right. Like, back then, like, you got a good taste. Like,
yeah. Time is kind of the great equalizer. You know, people who were on top. You know, I see editors that I was pitching to back when I was started would now maybe be someone who would more want to pitch to me. You know, and the same happens of people who started later in their careers. I now see them as way above me. You know, and it's time really shows you what people are going to bring to the table in a very interesting way. But what intrigues me about what you're saying is that you've always been a do-it-yourself guy, so I wonder how you're going to apply that to working with publishers. Do you more want to do what you're doing now, but just with a publisher, or are you interested in straight up work for hire?
Well, it's so interesting because I've signed like almost 50 publishing deals in my career with other people. So like, I do generally get the most attention for the work that I do on my own, but like, I've signed quite a few publishing deals in my life. I dare say I've signed more publishing deals than most traditionally published authors like have ever signed in their life as well. So there's a couple of things. One, I do a lot of anthology pieces, so like for either my own or I get hired to do write for hire. But the thing I'm most interested in doing right now is getting publishers for like the work that is out of that is going out of print soon. And I've been setting this up this way since 2014, where our books don't go to Diamond. Like, they don't come out in paperback. They only come out in hardcover, so that I could retain some exclusivity in case I wanted to like bring Ichabod to a publisher. And then also doing work for hire for and work like new work, like creator owned work. So I'm kind of agnostic to what I do. Like, I think that at this point, I've done so much work and I've saturated the indie market so much that like there's only so much that one human can penetrate without having other people validate them as well. I think you can go really far on your own. I think that, you know, I've become a 6-figure author, mostly with my own stuff, but like, there's something about working with like other publishers that like opens you up to a whole new round of people. And now that those people can also go back and see all of my old work, it like makes even more sense to be on publishers' radar, because I have a body of work that you can bring people back to. So I think it's only strategic that at some point, unless you're going to be like running ads, like at some point you run out of people who want only indie comics that don't come from like a publisher. And like, so you at least need to get in with a publisher. So like, you're like, oh, I like how they worked with, I don't know, Zorro or Robin Hood or whatever. So like now I'm going to check out their other work. And I think all of that feeds into each other. I think it's probably a good idea to do your own work at the beginning. But like, then I think it's, at some point, if you saturate the market enough, some people are going to say, well, if you're so good, why aren't you working for X? And like, if you're like, actually, I have a book coming out for X, they're like, oh, well, now I'm going to come back to like your other work just because you say. I think of the Jamie Tyndall stuff when like he stopped working for Zenescope doing covers for a while, and suddenly like the commissions at his table dried up. And then like he came back to work for Zenescope, and then like suddenly he was getting hired all of the time to do stuff because he already had that, like he had like the, oh, I'm doing exclusive covers for Zenescope, and they're like, oh, now I want you again.
Yeah, there is this legitimizing force to working specifically with a publisher that's in Diamond Previews. You know, right. I've seen that artists feel the same way too as customers, in that when I tell an artist that a book will be in Diamond, the reaction is very different than when I say it's on Kickstarter. There's almost this people perceive it as a lack of legitimacy. I don't agree personally, but do you feel when you see this idea that working with a more traditional publisher implies legitimacy, do you feel a resentment as someone who has done this on your own for so long, or do you more just kind of roll with the punches there?
No, I feel resentment when people look at the 16 issues of Ichabod and say, I don't think that I can sell this on the direct market. That is when that I feel insulted by, because I'm like, really? Because like, I don't know, I did with myself, sold $150,000 of these books at conventions. So like, you're telling me you can't sell like 16 issues of a book with like the resources behind you? Like, you're right, I don't want to work with you, but like, that is how I feel. But I do also think that, like, I don't want to say they're right, because I don't think that's accurate, but I do think there is a shorthand. If you say, I trust Space Between, and if Space Between is going to work with Russell, then like, then that's like the shorthand of like, okay, I trust Pat likes Russell. Pat was working with Russell. And I think there's also the legitimizing factor also, because like, we haven't worked together, but like, if one of us were to work with the other one, then like but we've done a lot of promos together and cross promos and talked about each other a lot.
Yeah, so, like, it's true. I feel like we have, but we haven't. It's true.
Yeah. Oh wait, I think we were in a couple anthologies together, but like,
I know that we're doing one. I'm not sure if this is even announced. I'm so bad at keeping track of things, but there's one coming out that we have a similar topic and we have to kind of coordinate. You know? Yeah. So that'll be one thing. But yeah, no, it seems like I've known you for so long that, you know, I feel like we have, but even though we haven't, sort of the same as Charlie Stickney. I feel like I've worked with him on a million things, but never. You know, it's weird.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes it's like we have worked together on an anthology, but I think people think that an anthology work is more collaborative than it actually is, when it's really like a bunch of people sending in their pages, and then an editor on top of them saying like yes, and like I try and keep our anthologies much more collaborative but still, it is mostly me and Chris working with a person. It's like very top down, less like crossover stuff. But anthology is, I think I've finally gotten into enough anthologies that more people give me a shot, because like, I think there was this overarching thing where I would come out and I would rail against a specific publisher, and I would name names. Like I would name like what they like, their terrible contracts. Like I would like decimate them. And like, as far as persona non grata for years with publishers, like that first round of publishers, some of them hate me because like I called them out specifically. And so and what's funny is the publishers now like appreciate what I did, because like the contracts are way better now than they used to be, I think, as a rule. But yeah, if like as years went by and I did my own anthologies and I got a bigger name, people started asking me to be in anthologies, and they were more open to me. And that opened a ton of doors, because suddenly I was like, well, I was in all of these anthologies, like 30 or 40 anthologies. And they were like, and then publishers would see that and say, oh, well, maybe you're not the lightning rod of controversy that I was told that you were. And so that opened a lot of doors. And then it opened a lot of doors. Like Travis was in our Cthulhu is Hard to Spell anthology. And then we did a lot of promo when I was in his Cthulhu Invades Oz and Cthulhu. And so like we had a lot of cross-pollination there too. Just think, like, I'm not saying you have to be in like with a publisher, especially at the beginning of your career. Like I think one of the mistakes that young creators make is they think that a publisher is going to validate you. Like you're going to suddenly be like, oh, now I'm going to make $1 million because like I work with Source Point Press or whatever. And it's like, this really goes to the thing we were talking about before about like a career. It's like a career of consistently published books with publishers and self-published books and anthology work and consistently being in front of people is the main driver of a lot of people finally taking a chance on you because they have seen you enough times. And so it's like PR. People are always like, oh, well, I'm gonna go on 10 podcasts and it's gonna like blow up for me. And it's like, no, you need to go on like 10 podcasts every time you launch.
Dude,
and like,
yes.
Yeah, because it's like those pieces add up over time, but no single piece, even if you're in Vogue, like unless you're in Vanity Fair, that's why when like a person's in Vogue, they're in Vanity Fair and Entertainment Weekly and all of these things at once, because it's seeing people all of these different times that like really makes somebody feel like a friend to you and that you can trust.
That's very interesting because I mean, what you said about this perception that creators have about the one thing validating them, that's something I've seen, throughout my career. I remember specific conversations where creators who I looked at as promising, including one that's been canceled since RIP, dude, has they have this perception in some of these young creators that they have to see their publishing gigs as an constantly elevating series of steps, that they worked with this publisher, so now they can't work with any publisher that they perceive to be lower than. They have to make sure the next gig elevates and elevates and elevates. And I'm just like, wow, that is so not how I approach this. And it's kind of difficult for me to wrap my brain around that, when really it is what you said about the constant work thing, that you have to appear to be very active, and that having your hands in different publishers throughout your career shows people that you're active and reminds them of your existence, that this is a very fickle readership and industry, that you have to keep saying, hey, dude, I'm here,
Yeah, and I think that it's really myopic, nearsighted, whatever the word is, to like look at a smaller publisher as like less than, because usually a smaller publisher is able to do cooler things than a bigger publisher is, who is more established. And on top of that, like sometimes you're doing a book that you can't do. So for instance, I just wrote a metaphysical book, and like I've only written one other one in my career. It didn't sell that well. I think it's just because like metaphysical is not my niche. Like it's not a thing that I am like steeped in. So I found a smaller metaphysical publisher that I really love, I respect, I've worked with before. And I was like, hey, like, I think you do a really good job to like publishing this book. Would you be interested in it? And we're like seeing if that's a possibility at this point. But like, the smaller, I couldn't just call Tor and ask them if they want to do a metaphysical book. Right? They're going to be like, no, but like a smaller publisher, and like metaphysical just happens to be a smaller like niche, that like if you really want to do that niche well, like you're gonna cap out pretty low at the amount of people. But that doesn't mean, I think people equate good with like money. Like they're like, oh, this publisher's better because they make more money. There's a Tom Brevoort thing where he's like, the cream rises, that's how we have diamond catalogs. And I was like, you're saying that like the most popular, and he was saying the most popular book is the one that is the best. And I was like, ooh, that is a real weird thing, because like it's almost never the case that the number one selling book is the best. It is the number one selling book is the most palatable to the most amount of people.
Yes.
And that almost never means best to any one of them.
I entirely agree. I mean, just the idea of equating diamond to quality. I mean, I've thought constantly about putting space between and Diamond, but I'm so spread thin, and I have who I pay to be on my team doing so many other things that it isn't even in the top 10 things I want them working on,
Right.
So
well, that's
wow,
what
yeah.
makes your deal with Black Mask so interesting with the Destiny stuff, because that's one of the ways that we have been thinking about our own work is like, okay, like we don't specialize in Diamond. We specialize in making great books and like putting them on Kickstarter and then showing them direct to customer. So like, why don't we work with a company that's really good at like doing this other thing? Because I know the work is good. Like I know the work will sell. It's just we are not set up to exploit that work in any way that would be valuable to us or to Diamond, but like working with Black Mask or some other publisher. And to mention Black Mask, like they make awesome books. Like, are you telling me that like your Spider-Man book is better than a Black Mask book just because it outsells it 10 to 100 to 1? Like, absolutely. I would never say that is the case.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Or are you saying that that book is 100 times better than a Black Mask book because it sold 100 times more? Like that is also like, and it's so like, I was really, of all the things that I've read this year in comics, like that was one that rankled me the most.
That was from this year, huh?
Yeah. It's like a couple months ago.
That's so, I mean, it's so direct market minded. I've been using that term where it's like, I don't want to say it's regressive because, the direct market, it has its problems, but it has been functioning how it is for a long time. But there is this, I mean, it's not even new anymore. There's this wave of non-direct market creators who have been doing their own thing on not only just Kickstarter, but with this new media, Kickstarter, Webtoon, even before that. I think of Sejic in that way. Sejic is someone who he put all of Sunstone, and it's still there on DeviantArt for free, right? Mm-hmm. And then that goes on to be the number one book the Top Cow has ever done. And that, I think, speaks volumes that Sunstone is successful in the DM because it was successful in a bigger way on a different platform. Yeah. And so that's so strange to me to see that comment was made now. It speaks to a very different mindset than what I have, for sure.
Well, and like it's also how it also kind of talks to like how Marvel thinks about finding talent, right? Because like, where do they find talent? Well, like most of the talent is like some people who've been successful in the direct market that they find on like a smaller publisher. I'm not saying they don't then go through like Instagram and all of those other things, but like it just shows like a very small niche of what Marvel's looking for when like if they open themselves a little bit more, maybe they would have like more, they've not had diversity problems in the past, and like they've not had like other issues in the past, and like you kind of have to expand yourself. And like I don't know, I know we both have the same opinion of this, but like you're never going to tell me that like White Ash is not one of the best books that have comics that exists right now, and like it does not like blow up numbers in the direct market, but it like blows up numbers on Kickstarter and it blows up numbers other places. It's tough. It's like, I think once you get to do this after like 5 or 6 years, you kind of, and the pandemic did this for me. It's like, okay, where are you deficient in your career? And like one of the things that you can be deficient of in your career is like, you see the world through the lens of how you came up. Like whether that's like being an exclusive artist or a writer at a company or like working the direct market or working Kickstarter, like we all have these little pockets of like whatever we think. And I think in order to find that next level of success for most people, it almost always is moving outside of yourself into some other way of thinking, or finding other ways, or finding other things to incorporate into your own world, whether that's courses or nonfiction or whatever that thing is. But the more diversified you can be, like the better you are in a 2020 world, and the more likely you are to find success for a longer period of time. I was in a writer's group with Marv Wolfman for years, and one of the things he said is, when he started doing movies and TV and video games, people were like, stay in your lane, stay in comics. And he's like, but I don't want to, I'm a writer. I'm not like a comic writer. Yes. I'm a writer who loves, he's like, I love comics best, but like sometimes the comic well will run dry, and like I need to be able to do other things so that when the comic well runs dry, I can still get I can still get jobs in video games and in TV and in movies and all of this stuff. And I thought that was like so smart. And one of the reasons he's endured for 50 plus years is because he is always like changing and growing, and he's never thinks that he knows everything. I remember I went to his house one day to show him how to do Facebook Live, because like he's like, I got to know what to do this thing. So like those are the careers that like I really look up to. It's not the person who like became the number one a book in the world for comics. It's the people that have like survived for so long that like they just become synonymous with like writing, or like that, or like they just like go into the background, and they're like, and like you just know that they've absorbed so much knowledge that they're incredibly versatile.
Yeah, that's so interesting to me, and it makes me think, of what I hope I do and what I know that you do. You have, people for a while. I hear it less now, but people for a while were in this conversation about how we're building our brand, how we're creating we're turning ourselves into a brand. This book that I took is part of my brand, building this identity. But I've always seen it more that I'm an artist. I create brands. I am not a brand. And I see that in what you do. I look at your output, and I know that while you've done books in your Godsverse series as both novels and graphic novels, I think that there is certainly an audience that will do both. However, I think that as someone who's been doing this for a while, there is also a very separate prose audience and graphic novel audience. And the how-to books that you do, I also feel, while there could be some overlap for people who love your stuff, that's also serving a separate beast. And I admire that. I see that as you building different brands under one label overall, which is Russell Nohelty. And that's much closer to how I picture a successful career, is building not yourself as a single identity, but an overarching body of work. And that is what I see you doing over time. And it's been very cool. Is that close to how you perceive yourself?
Yeah, so I don't think it was how I perceived myself at first. My first, like, for instance, I did nonfiction because I wanted to interview interesting creatives, figure out what their best tips to break in was, and then steal them to use them myself. And eventually doing enough of these interviews worked. And then it became a way for me to break in to become guests at shows, and it was all to fuel that thing. But I think recently, especially, I've started to break away from that mentality. And I think much more, I'm not trying to convince you that my books are good. I'm trying to convince you that my point of view is interesting and worth watching, and then come into my universe. And you can pick Ichabod, you can pick Cthulhu, you can do my nonfiction stuff, like however you want to get into the universe, like the Russell Nohelty, whatever universe is. But like, I want you to think that my way of thinking is interesting, and like bring something new to your world, or verify something about your world, or makes you feel seen, or whatever that thing is. And then you just have to decide if like I am the right person to invest your time into. And like once I have proven to you that like I am worth investing your time into, then it's just you picking whether you want the courses, like how much do you want to spend? Do you want to get the whole Godsverse? Do you want to get Ichabod? Do you want to get Cthulhu? Like, where do you want to get into this universe? Where is the hitching post? And then my job is to like mold all of this stuff into one cohesive thought, or 5 cohesive thoughts, but giving people the on-roads to experience. This sounds so douchey, but like experience me.
Hey, man, I want to hear it.
Yeah. Like experience me in whatever way they see fit. And I'm starting to be like, okay, we have a board game, we have a card game coming out next year. We're working on a TTRPG. Like we're working on other ways, because you know, for years I was like, build the brand, like build the books, have a body of work. But at some point you have a body of work and you're like, okay, like, how do I, like, I'm capped out at Ichabod. Like, you know, I've gotten as much Ichabod fandom as I may ever get, unless I'm doing conventions, which I can't, because we talked about how I blew my back out. And I got, so like, okay, so, but I can do a card game. Like I can do an RPG. Like I can sell I can have someone do the single issues or the trades or an omnibus, or like make an audio drama, or like, you know, there's all of these other ways to bring people into the world and then get them to circulate. Because some of those people that like audio dramas would be like, oh, there's a bunch of comics, and oh, there's a bunch of novels. And we definitely have that too, where people are like, oh, this is a graphic novel. I'm like, no, there's also 12 novels. And they get so excited that like, like, oh, I have this whole big universe to explore. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but I do think of myself more as like less convincing you that like Ichabod is good, and convincing people like I am someone worth investing in. And once you know that, then if you want to learn Kickstarter, I have this. Like if you want a book about psychological horror, I have this. And then like figuring that part out. And some people want to go really deep and get everything. Some people just really love one series, or they love how I think about nonfiction, but not fiction, or like whatever that thing is. But yeah, I think a lot of it has become convincing people that like I'm worth investing in, but by just existing in the world and showing myself, as opposed to proving that like I feel like I have nothing to prove now. What I have is like to show myself. And then some people will say, yes, I really want that. I love that. I'd love to have more of that experience.
And on the topic of more of the experience, you mentioned that you've reached what you feel is the peak of your Ichabod readership. And I wanted to ask about that, because you this is sort of a year of endings for you. You're doing your last campaign of Ichabod. And you started Ichabod. He is in an insane asylum. He is in a straitjacket. He's in a dark room locked up, and he hears this voice, and all of a sudden there is a horrific monster. And the story goes on as this psychological horror action saga. And it's been a staple of your career for years, and you're choosing to end it now. And as someone, you know, right now, I am working on the last few pages of Prison Witch. I also chose to end that. And I'm very ending minded. I obsess over the ending of my series, even one like Destiny New York, which is years away. And I think about it all the time. So I want to ask you, what made you choose to end it? Was it the idea that you've reached as many as you can, so it's time to bow out? Was it a fully creative, this is the end it has to be? What was it that contributed to you finishing Ichabod this year?
Yeah, so there's 3 big projects that I thought about this year, and I think I ended each of them for 3 different reasons. But with Ichabod and Cthulhu, both of them were pretty similar. With Cthulhu was hard to spell. I pictured it in this anthology series in 3 parts: the monsters planning to invading, and then being pushed back by the mythological gods. And I got to that point and was like, anthologies are very hard. I'm just like, I'm done editing and producing anthologies in this world. With Ichabod, I had an ending point in mind that I'd always wanted to get to. And I thought it would take me 7 volumes, and I ended up getting there in 4. And I was like, well, that's like the first, like the last page is exactly what I always envisioned for the end of Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter. Now, Ichabod Jones, the title of the book is actually Ichabod Jones. Monster Hunter is like the thing that like they're going through now. So like, I'm not going to say Ichabod Jones is done, but the Monster Hunter part of it is done.
Okay.
But I will say that like, to me, Ichabod, like, I'm not planning to come back to Ichabod. Like I have no plans to come back to Ichabod, even though I have like an outline of what what another thing would be. And part of it is, man, indie comics are hard, man. Like I got to I got to an end, and I feel like Ichabod was not a complete thought. And like people may have liked it or disliked it, but nobody who's read it has ever read the complete thought except for like the 6 people who have seen the end of this book. And I didn't think that like I could really do much with Ichabod. I would like show it as like a centerpiece of my career until the end, because the end is so important to this particular book. Like it's such a weird book and it goes in so many different tangents. And now that it's done, like I fully believe that like, or I hope, like I fully believe it's one of the best independent comics that has ever been made at the end, beginning to end. Like if you read it as one thought, like you will get to the end and be like, holy shit, I can't believe they made that thing work and it all wrapped up perfectly. Like I really believe, I didn't think we would get there, but like I don't believe that about any of my other work, but like I believe that about Ichabod because like the care and the way that it was produced, and like I'm friggin' nervous that we got there, and I was like, I can't do more because like this to me is like the perfect ending for this particular book. And like I know that's blowing smoke at my own ass a little bit, but like I really believe like when I got to the end of Ichabod, and I was like, holy shit, it all worked. Like it all worked, like the whole thing. Because if you don't know Ichabod, like you don't know if the whole time if he's killing monsters, humans, or it's all in his head. And then there's like back in time switches and forward in time switches, and like like there's just so much going on that I was like, I'm never going to be able to finish this appropriately. And so the fact that we got there, I got to the end, and I was like, well, like this has to be the end of this arc because it can't possibly go on. Right. But I also I deeply believe in endings. Like I deeply believe things should end. Like I believe that things should not come back once they end. Like I believe that like Arrested Development was a perfect 3 seasons, and like everything they did after that ruined it. Like ruined the next 3 seasons, ruined my enjoyment of the first 3 seasons. Like so it's one of those things also where it's like like a creator should be able to go out on their own terms. But like they should also be willing to say, I don't give a shit if you want more. Like I believe that it's over, and like you can hate me, you can love me, I don't care, but like this is it. And like this is when it's good. If I bring it back, it's not going to be good anymore. And that is the other thing that I thought. It's like this is the peak of Ichabod. Like I can't bring this back without it suffering in quality as much as I might want to, because it is profitable. And I try to take that out of all of my decisions of like, is it more profitable to continue on with books? Usually it is. Usually like once you get to after a certain level, like it's probably more profitable to just do this book for the rest of your career. But unless you're Mike Mignola and can reinvent Hellboy with different writers and creators and other things throughout their career, or Spawn, or like, and like some of those books some of those books that have lasted hundreds of issues should have ended also. But so yeah, I mean, I think I deeply care about endings, and I deeply believe that like every creator should end their work at the time that they see fit, but probably years before they think that it's like they actually do end it.
Yeah, and that's scary to me. It's scary that, I look at a long work like Destiny New York. I have in my head the number of volumes that I think it should be, and the more time that I spend with it, though, because my philosophy with characters is that I don't want anyone to be a supporting character. As soon as someone starts to feel like they are in the narrative to facilitate a different character's arc, I'll switch focus to them and have them develop their own arc. So my sort of spreading outward mentality has really ballooned the series, and it's done it in a way where I do all these spin-offs, but also the main title. And I often think about the life of the series and when's the right time to bow out. So yeah, hearing that you also think about endings so much. I mean, I could have predicted that. I definitely could have seen that in the way that you build your bodies of work. It's very important to me too, because I actually just had this conversation with Jeff Massey, who's working as assistant editor at Space Between, that right now Destiny is our flagship, but when it's done, the spinoffs are done, the different series under the banner are done. It's all done. Once the main title is done, I'm out, you know. And hearing you say the same thing, the endings are valuable and are important, is so, I think, rare in comics, you know, which is why, you know, I can list off what I think are TV series that have had beautiful, amazing finales, but the same is not true of comics and even indie comics. You know, I can think of maybe a handful of major finale issues, but often it's just the series gets canceled.
Yeah, or the series should have been canceled or been done 20 issues before or something like that. Or like, you know, there's a big gap. I think of something like Preacher where it's like, well, like there were 4 really great volumes in that 10 volume set. And like, then there were 4 really bad ones, 2 really bad ones, and 4 ones that could have given or taken. So I'd rather just give all of the best ones. And it was so, I was on an interview last night and the person was like, how did you get the end to where it was? And I was like, well, I planned it for like all of it was like planned for that exact moment. And, you know, I think that's something where, you know, like it can get too much. Like I think Game of Thrones suffers from that. Like I think George R.R. Martin suffers from this has to end the exact way that I mean to, and like it has to all make sense, but there's too many threads. It's like I don't think that it's always a good thing, but I do think that, you know, it's very hard. I do think that it's very hard to start something, planting seeds, and then in the middle decide, oh, we're going another way.
Yeah.
Like you see that in comics so often where you're like, oh, well, you know, I really would have liked to see this person end their run because they clearly had a point, but like after 4 issues, they were done and some new team came off and then they had 3 issues and then they had 6 issues. And like, there's just no continuity in these titles so all of the breadcrumbs that people put in there like are dead. And like a lot of times people like there's this phenomenon in movies and TV, right, where people where like fans guess the ending and then they change the ending and you're like, well, yeah, the ending sucks now because like all of it was leading up to this moment. And if you go back, you're suddenly like, oh, well, like, yeah, this makes no sense to me. Like I would rather see something that said, yeah, you guessed it. You guessed it. Like, congratulations. Enjoy the next 3 years where like we lead up to the ending. And like, don't watch if you don't want to, but like, sorry, like we're not going to just change it because like you happened to know what we were going to think. Like you should. Like, I also believe you should be able to guess it. Like someone that follows the clues of your story across 5 volumes, if they can't guess, if they can't at least luckily guess the ending based on the clues that you've left out, like there's probably something wrong with your story. Like I'm not saying everyone should guess it, but there should be enough breadcrumbs laid that like someone could make the case of what the ending will be. And one of 1,000 times they guess it right. So if you have enough fans like guessing the ending, one of them is just gonna be right.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. The same shit happened to me on my Charmed run. I did a 20-issue Charm run, Charm season 10, and it was set up in such a way that I found what I felt was the perfect ending for the series that could function as an ending for Charmed overall if they never go back to it. And I used to do these interviews with a site, and the comments will be full because people, you know, didn't really buy the comic, but they love to pirate it, you know? So the comments would be full every time. And there was one that laid out probably, I'd say, 70% of the plot of what happens, of what they think is going to happen in the ending. And they were right. And that was what was going to happen. What wasn't correct was the reasons those things happen and the emotion behind it. And when I followed through with that ending instead of changing it, because I care so much more about delivering the right ending than a surprising ending. And I delivered that ending, and people commented that old comment saying, oh, it was predictable. That person was able to guess. And it's like, I mean, I don't see why that's a horrible thing. You know,
Yeah.
I am not in the business of surprising people as the ultimate end goal. Surprises along the way for sure. You know, like I have elements of Destiny in New York where you're reading the book and you think one thing until a character makes a major reveal and it changes everything. Those are the surprises that I deem valuable because they're based in character. But
Right.
the ending, I mean, the ending itself is the end goal, you know?
Right. Well, it's everyone is going to be everyone that's reading it up until the end. Like, is not there's it's a fraction of how many people will actually read that thing when it's in trade or when it's done or when it's up on Comixology or whatever. So it's like, yes, if you make a predictable ending, I think of Game of Thrones, right? It's like, hey, the 8th season of Game of Thrones was bad. Like, it was bad. Like, it was legitimately a bad show, but like the points that they made in that show, if they had expounded on it, if they had allowed Dany to slowly go mad, and then like that, the same exact bullet points happen, but it's across 5 seasons instead of 5 episodes or 3. Like, Dracarys dies, but like he doesn't do it in such a stupid way. Like, all of these things are just plot points. Like, they don't matter. Like, I mean, it's not that they don't matter, but like they pretty much don't matter. Like, what matters is how you weave it all together into the end.
Oh,
and
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
And you can just tell that like someone got an outline at the end and was like, we're just going to paint by numbers we're going to add as many of these bullet points to the end as possible. And then like, yep. So like, it actually makes me want to read the last books, because like, I hope that that what happens in the end of the books is like Dany goes from kingdom to kingdom trying to get consolidation and just gets rejected and rejected and rejected, and people keep bending the knee to Jon, and not her but Jon at every single turn, until she is so angry at every single person that she has no choice but to burn down King's Landing. And like, if you see that, I don't even like the Game of Thrones books, but if you can make that emotion resonate, then it completely changes the exact same incidents that happen.
Yeah. That is such a major concern of mine. I mean, I'm in the add pages mode to what I'm working on with Prison Witch to avoid that exact thing, you know. It's so true that the idea matters so much less than the execution, you know, and we have these ideas in our head of where these things could go, but you know, it brings me back to how young writers, you know, you do these submissions panels at cons, these how to be a comics writer panels, and one of the most common questions I hear is a young writer saying, how can I be sure that when I submit that the publisher isn't going to steal my idea? And it's just like, well, dude, because your idea is worthless. Your idea is the bare bones of something that someone else would have to put so much work on to make it into anything. An idea is essentially meaningless. And that is, I try to see my work that way, in that as good of an idea as I have, it is not successful until I put the work in and to make it right.
Yeah, and to make and the execution, like you said, is and how everyone executes is like that's why certain writers get hired, right? Like, because like they know they're going to execute, and that's why certain writers get hired like without even having to submit anything, because they're like, we just want to work with you. Like, we know the quality of your work. Like, just do something related to this, and then then it's a writer's job at that point to be like, I don't think I can do. Or like, here's I had a one that I did for this company, the superhero story. And I was like, well, what I really want to do is like the only 2 girls on your superhero team, like having a chat about why they're the only 2 girls in the superhero team for like 10 pages. And they were like, yeah, okay, that's fine. I was like, all right, like, as long as you're okay with me, like, having that discussion, like, I can do that thing. And I don't think anyone else is going to do anything similar, because everyone else wants a punch fight story in this world. So like, I understand why you would want to hire me on that way, because like, I will bring something uniquely different. And I think the thing that most young writers don't get is like, you have to be able to make something uniquely different from everyone else and bring your unique voice. And I don't even think you know your unique voice until you've written several arcs of books, like
I'd say
several
so
books.
much. Yeah. I mean, my voice now from when I started at Zenescope, and Zenescope, I've written so many fan fiction novels and so much on my own. But yeah, I feel like I've only come into myself in the past maybe in 5 years or so personally. But Ichabod ends, and what I wanted to ask you beyond what we talked about the ending, do you, this is we kind of punish ourselves sometimes as writers, and I know just based on your body of work and how much there is that you do as well. Do you have a next long-term project, or are you gonna enjoy some short-term writing gigs starting now? What is the future of your workload?
So I'm on writing sabbatical right now till 2023. So I'm doing a bunch of other stuff, but I'm like not writing anything new until I come back from Paris, at least towards the end of this year. Because I'm using Paris as like the guide to this new big fantasy world. So I have like 12 or 15 books that haven't come out yet that are done.
Damn, dude. Oh my God.
So I have,
Wow.
let's see, 4 more of this series, and then like a crime thriller, and like there's at least like 10 books that are not even out yet plus one I'm working on with a new publisher. So yeah, there's one that's coming out next year that like we have finished the first issue of, and we're in the middle of issue 2 of, that a publisher is publishing. So like there's a lot of stuff that's out there that like just never has come out yet. So I actually have releases. I could literally sit back, twiddle my thumbs, and do nothing, and I still have releases to the end of 2024.
I mean, that's sick. That's cool.
It's too much. It's too long. Like I believe in being a year ahead of my slate, not 2 years ahead of my slate. So like I was like, I need to like just wait out and not write for a while because I'm just too far ahead of my slate. Like I feel like I can't turn. Feel like if something cool comes up, like I can't make a pivot into that because I have so much stuff coming out. And so much stuff with publishers coming out and so much stuff with Monica coming out. I do have a really big world that I think is going to be the next thing. And I did just submit a new pitch to a publisher this morning for a story I've been working on for a very long time. But I don't know, like, so I have a question for you, I guess, is I feel like I don't have anything left to say a lot of times. Like, I feel like I have written so many books, I've written so many projects that when I sit down to write something currently, the reason why I'm on a writing sabbatical, I'm like, well, like I already wrote that book. Like I wrote that book and that book and that book. And every time I sit down to write, it's so hard for me to come up with something that feels unique, that hasn't already been covered by me, like in excruciating depth in a 1,000,000-word book. And do you have any of that? Like, how do you overcome that?
Do I have any of that? Yes and no. I don't, I have, because I divide my work into 2 different boxes in my head. Okay. I do the this is my masterwork box. It sounds so cock to say, but it's true. And then I have the this is my fun shit box. And I've been putting a lot in the fun shit box because that's just I think, what if blah 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 blah, right? Whereas with the masterwork, that's stuff like Destiny New York, and I have a method that I use to keep that interesting. And that method is that when I have a new character or a new role, I'll really begin to think outside of the box of myself, and then it's so hard to describe. I'll remove myself from myself and then develop a character with traits that are so unfamiliar to me, and then I'll really think about what it's like to be that person. There's a new character in Destiny New York Volume 5 that really reinvigorated the series in a way for me. And it's funny because he has such a small role, but it it comes about in such stupid ways. It came about because I found this deli, and I went to the deli and I found this sandwich that I love, this roast beef and Swiss sandwich. And there was one, the third time I went, in the course of like 2 weeks, uh, when I went in and I talked to the guy, ordered my sandwich, he said, "I didn't see you yesterday." And I was I was mortified. I I don't like to be that guy. I don't want to be a regular anywhere. I hate patterns. I hate being someone known for a certain kind of sandwich. It makes me feel like a fat fuck, you know? So I went to my car and my mind went wild. I started thinking, what if there's someone who is not like a freak like me, someone who loves patterns so much to a fault? And I just began to spin my mind that way, and that sort of thought challenge, as opposed to actual writing, I think more. I mean, I do envy your output. I think a lot more about my work than I actually physically write, which I do want to change. But I think it's my thought process that keeps me fresh. But all of my all the moments where I don't feel like I have something to say are when I find myself too in my head. I worry that I've thought about my work for so long that I have made it so I will be the only one to enjoy it. I don't think that's true when I have worked with my team and put it out and it's a final product, but I do get in that headspace where I have something to say, but I wonder if it's so specific to me that it's going to limit who likes the book.
Well, I think that, but isn't the point of it? The longer I get, the more I think like the point is to limit the book to like people who are going to freaking love it. Like, it's not to like, I don't care about anyone who's going to like casually like the book. Like, I'm interested in people who are going to flip their shit for like the book. And there are, I mean, if you're making Spider-Man, like you have to make different decisions, right? You have to be like, how am I going to get 100,000 people to buy this book, right? Or 200,000
very
people
much
or a million
so, yes.
books. But like when you're writing an indie book, isn't the beauty of it that you're like, I put so many characters in and I'm just like, oh, this person's going to love this story. And like, this person's going to love this character. And like, I literally am writing with like fans in mind, or like, I'm going to name it this person. And I'm going to tell them later that like, this is the name for the thing. And so, I find that like, maybe that's why Ichabod is such a limited audience, but like, to me, it's like, I'm making the thing that like, someone's gonna friggin' flip out for, and like the person that it's not for is gonna be like, this is definitely not. I tell people, you open up Ichabod in 3 pages, you're gonna know if it's for you or not. You're just gonna know, like the minute that Ichabod sees a monster and pisses himself, you're gonna know, and then runs away. You're gonna know if this is your book or not. Like, so yeah,
that's a good point.
Of course, you like now have such broad appeal for like the books that you're doing. And I do want to ask you this, because for a long time, you were like in the $20,000 range. Like you were doing like, you were like stuck. So like, and then like you did either Thirsty or Cheeky. I don't remember what was first, but like, and you went to like the next level up, and then that felt like it came back to the Destiny books as well. And like that like appeal. So like, could you talk to me about how it feels now to be doing like, because like, but people that don't know, 20 grand is like the break even point kind of on like a trade, right? Like, it's like for me, it's like 20 grand breaks me even on a trade and printing and all of that stuff. And like, I for years have been playing at this world where it's like, oh, you're making such good money. I'm like, no, I'm mostly breaking even. And then to take that and then go like double it and now consistently be able to do what I would expect to be like a decent profit at like doubling that would like, it must open so many like, it must like A, make you breathe a little bit easier, but B, open so many doors of like possibilities for you. Is that how it feels, or does it feel like a weight is on you?
Oh no, it feels like the doors have been open for sure. Because I'll be real. Prison Witch could have gone 4 volumes, but it went 3 because volume 2 didn't do as well as volume 1. There was volume 1, I think, did 16,000, and volume 2 did, I believe, 11,000. And that was, I thought, did this happen because I didn't promote it enough? Did it happen because it's it's similar to Destiny New York in its tone and vibe, but it isn't in the universe, so we didn't have that carryover. I had all these questions, and my decision was to take that series and to end it, and to make it a longer volume 3 and end it. My fear was that that would happen with Destiny New York, and I've been very cognizant of the numbers. And until volume 4, each volume did either better or the same than volume 4, which to me, volume 4 is the best one that we've done. And it slipped. Volume 4 went to the low 20s when we had been in the mid 20s. So that was that felt like doors closing. That was a major fear for me, because I was still kind of figuring out how to price certain tiers, and I was undercharging for a lot. And what came along then was Thirsty, and Thirsty broadened my audience in such a major way. And then Cheeky came on and more than doubled the Thirsty audience, and I'll tell you why. Why I think, and it's kind of funny. I think that people see Thirsty, and Thirsty is erotica. People see it, and they have a baseline expectation, and the expectation was, I am going to buy this book and I am going to receive pornography. Right. And but how Amy and I structured it was more of a challenge. The reason I did Thirsty was because people for years saw my Zenescope work and accused me of being a pornographer. And my response was, all right, so you think I write porn? I'm actually going to, and it's going to be better than your shit, is what I challenged myself to do, you know? So when I put out the Thirsty PDF, normally I'll put out a PDF and get a few reactions. I put out Thirsty, and people were shocked that there was a story with characters that they can care about, and that was funny, and that it was emotional. And that treatment of what people were ready to just be porn is what I feel turned people on to me and Amy too as writers, and really broadened what we could do with other stuff. Because the truth is, there are pieces of Destiny New York that I could take out and have as a story that would be in Thirsty. Like, Destiny New York has always been what we would say, like, HBO level, like, nudity and cursing and sexuality. It's been a book to me that is about real life in a magic realism world. So I think we definitely had carryover when people saw how we could treat erotica. My thought was that they might wonder, if they could do this with this kind of story, imagine what they could do with a more involved story. So yeah, it's definitely opened doors for me, and it makes me feel like I have the freedom to do what we were talking about, and that is end the story right and not give it the ending because of a dwindling audience, that's my fear, you know? And
well, I mean, that's what we had. I mean, people ask, like, you asked the question before and I gave you like the writerly answer, but like, I'll give you the publisher answer. Like,
yeah.
Volume 2 of Ichabod had 675 or something backers. Volume 2 had 475. Volume 3 has 300. Volume 4 has 317 now. Like, you can't lose another 200 backers. And like,
right.
And you know, the first volume of Cthulhu had over 1,000. Second volume had 750. The third volume had 725. So like, you're sitting there, like, as a publisher, as a numbers person, just being like, it doesn't matter that I'm making the same number or more. And like, the second volume of Cthulhu did 31,000, down from 39,000. And like, you can't do that as a publisher. You can't have that unpredictability and still keep a long-term book in production. And so I really looked at myself after Volume 2 of Cthulhu and was like, I promised people 3. I did. Promised everyone that I would do a third volume so they could finish out their stories right. I said if we hit 30, I would do number 3, and I'm very glad that we did. But like, after adding so much infrastructure after Cthulhu Volume 1, with like hiring editors and like increasing pay and all of that stuff, to then barely break even on the $30,000 that I did, like, I was like shocked. I was like, well, I don't love like anthologies enough to like keep doing this for this amount of money. So I must have hit a cap, or like, I think people probably saw the Cthulhu book and thought it was going to be all horror, and it's like not all horror. There's a lot of like comedy and like silliness and like other kinds of stuff in there, which like some people love. I don't know what the deal is with Ichabod. Like, frankly, like I'm honestly and truly shocked that like we're going to lose probably another 100 backers from Ichabod before it ends. Like, and people are like, no, you'll make it up. And I'm like, I mean, we'll probably make $22,000 like that, or 23,000 or whatever, 21,000. We're going to go over 20 grand, like, because like it's at 17 now when there's like 3 weeks to go. So like, we're going to hit that. But like, I am honest. I honestly and truly thought that people didn't buy volume 3 because it was like not the end and it wasn't the beginning. So volume 2 is the beginning, volume 4 is the end. So it's like, oh, well, volume 4 is going to come and like, we're going to get all of those people back. And to not have done that, like, I honestly am like, is there something wrong with like, did I like piss people off? Like, is it a personality thing with me? Like, is it the book? Like, the book is really good. And 475 people bought the third book, down from 600 people bought the second book. So like, how do you read the second book and then be like, no, I don't want the rest of it? I just don't understand. I honestly and truly don't understand it. I'm very grateful for the 300 and something 20 people who have backed the book, the $17,000 that we've raised, and like how excited you are. But like, we should be at double that. Like, and if people wanted Ichabod, like there's a thing in marketing where like people talk out of the side of their mouth. Like, people are like, I would love to like have more Ichabod. I would love to have Prince. I would love to have this. And you're like, here's Prince. And they're like, bye. I love a t-shirt. Bye. I love it. And so you're constantly like trying to figure out like what people will actually support enough for you to keep making it. And what if nothing else has happened? We are for sure not going to hit like we're definitely going to lose backers. There's no way to make up 175 backers, 150 backers in the 3 weeks that we have left, like based on the pace that we have. It's just not going to happen. So like, we're going to lose backers. And like, we should have gained a bunch of backers back that didn't back volume 3. So I'm stuck wondering like what happened. And when I go to conventions now, like having all 4 volumes, people like are less likely to buy it than when there was 1 volume. And I'm just
I've seen that too personally. Yeah, I've seen that with my shit too.
And I'm like, yeah, so we did $4,000 last time we did San Diego. We barely broke 2,000 this year. And I had like triple the amount of books. Yeah. So I'm just like, okay, well, you don't, as a collective, you don't want more Ichabod, and I don't want to make more Ichabod. So like, there's an easy break. It's like an easy, like, nope, well, we're not going to do this thing because I can't possibly make a volume 5 and then risk not hitting the amount of money to like even break even on the book, which is where we stand now. Like, if we made another volume, like, there's almost no chance that like we would make the amount of money that we need to like fund the book. And like, I know that there's always attrition from volume to volume of a book, but like, I'm very surprised that like, usually you lose after the second volume, 25 or so backers, I don't know, 30 backers, 40 backers, but like to lose 100, like almost 200 backers, and to lose another 100 backers is like that's you can't keep spiraling down in that way. Like, you just can't do it and like have a functioning company. So part of the ending was knowing 2 years ago when we went from 675 to 475 or whatever the number is, to look at that and be like, well, that does not, like, I can't, like, that trajectory is just all wrong. Like, even though we made $2,000 more, we made it off of one $3,000 backer. So we would have made considerably less if we didn't have that backer. And this one is only the average backer pledge level is so much higher than the than the previous campaigns as to why we're sitting where we are now. So yeah, I mean, it's very hard when you have a book and you're like, wow, like, I mean, I don't think I'm blowing smoke. Like, I think it's a fucking genius book. Like, I think it's like a brilliant, like how just all of it came together. I am fucking surprised at how it came together. Like, I am surprised that like I was able to deliver something that like is so like blows my own mind that I was able to put it together and Renzo was able to draw it. So I'm sitting here going, wow, I couldn't have made a better book. Like, I mean, I physically, Russell Nohelty could not have made a better book than this. Like, if you read this book and are like, this is not a good book, I'm like, then I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know comics. Like, I don't know story. I don't know anything. Like, so then that's okay. But yeah, I mean, the of the 3 volumes, the only thing that I think as a publisher I could continue doing is the Gods vs. Chronicles. And the Guy vs. Chronicles, because over 3 volumes, it stayed steady. It hasn't risen. It hasn't stopped. Almost every volume, every time I do a Kickstarter for the Gods vs. Chronicles books, they almost are the same number of backers. It's just that I raise more money because there's more books in there. So like the only one I think that if I, with my publisher hat on, and like both of us have to have a publisher hat and a creator hat, right?
Sure do.
You have to say, like, I know you've talked about Clonsters a lot, and like I love Clonsters, but you know, sometimes you love a book and you put everything into it, and you're like, oh, I guess, fuck me then. I guess, like, fuck me then.
It's very true. You know, I try to look at it too as with Clonsters. I look at how Volume 1 did, and I look back at those numbers, and I'm like, fuck, that did well for what it was, because Volume 2 didn't, and I hadn't really accepted what Kickstarter is yet, and I would think things like this. I would think, all right, well, kids aren't on Kickstarter, but adults are on Kickstarter, and they need gifts for their kids. But then I had to put myself in what you say is the publisher mind, but is an adult looking for a gift for their kid going to buy a book that looks good, but is not going to come for months and might even be late because of all these different factors? Probably no, you know? So I really pulled back from doing books that were, I mean, I now give the advice, don't say all ages, dude. Even if it's all ages, don't say it. Let the art speak for itself, because it seems in many ways to be a limiter. And I mean, it certainly has been for me. But Clonsters is for sure the one that I wish we could do more. And maybe at some point we can, but it's not a book where I look at as it's going to break out, simply because the audience isn't there.
Yeah, well, and I think I've been. So I look at the books that are super successful on Kickstarter, right? And like I think that Ichabod fails to capture many of the things that are essential to a Kickstarter book. One, it stars a guy.
That's a good point.
Two, that guy is not attractive. 3, that guy is like not suave and sophisticated. He's brutal, but like not in the way that like is attractive. Like he's like very grossly and like almost incompetent. Like he doesn't grow into power. All of his stuff is short-lived. All of his successes are short-lived and hard fought. Like it's not Galarian, right? Like I tell Charlie all the time, like, man, you nailed literally everything that like Kickstarter. Like if I could list the 10 things that everyone loves about Kickstarter, you hit every single one, from variant covers to nudity to like action to blood to violence to like to fantasy to like he hit every single trope that you could possibly hit. And so did Thirsty. And I think that one of the things you have to think about is like, is it worth it is it worth keeping this book that I love going just because I love it? Or is it better to like bring in another project, and then hopefully people will love that project more, and then they will go back to your other work and like that work? I think of
that's
like
a major
it as
hope.
I think of it as like a bullseye, right? And like right here in the middle is like your core weird book that like very few people are going to read. And Ichabod, I've been very blessed with how many people read Ichabod. Like this is not me complaining about those people. It's just like a fact of publishing. And then with every release, I've been trying to like make the concentric circles bigger so more people like it, and then those people can funnel back into Ichabod and the Godsverse Chronicles. And so like it's Ichabod, and then the Godsverse Chronicles kind of comes out and expands the audience a little bit, and then Obsidian Spindle a little bit more, and Cthulhu is Hard to Spell a little bit more. And at every turn, people are like bringing, like you're hopefully bringing more people back to the core. But
yes,
at some point, so I've been doing Ichabod for 12 years now. Like, I think that is very legitimate for people to be like, enough with Ichabod. Like publishers say the same thing. They're like, I would love to work with you on something, just not fucking Ichabod. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. So like I've talked to them about doing something, and everyone is super excited to work with me on something, but nobody is interested in carrying the book that made my career. So, and eventually you're just like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't want to hear about new Johnny the Homicidal Maniac anymore. Like, I love Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, but like, when he came out with a new thing, I was like, I don't know. Like, I want you to do a new thing. And so maybe that's just people being like, I've told you I want more Godsverse Chronicles graphic novels, or like, I want to do another thing, or like, you know, the art style for a lot of my work is very like cartoony, and like clearly the books that are more successful on Kickstarter are more realistic. So like maybe it's about bringing a more like realistic style, but like eventually your publisher hat has to go on, or you have to say, screw it, I'm just going to keep doing the book and like losing money on it, and I'll get a job at Walmart or like whatever the thing is. And like, that's a valid thing too. But like at some point you really have to look and be like, Ichabod way overperformed. Like Ichabod like should never have sold the number of copies that it did for what it was. Like the fact that it found an audience at all, the fact that it was able to double and then double and then double again the amount of copies that sold. Because when we first did Ichabod, it was like an unpopular book. Like it sold a fourth of what Katrina did. And then over time, like when we did the new covers, when we did Cthulhu, like it eventually like inched up till it was even, like neck and neck with Katrina. And I was like, what is happening? Ichabod is so weird. Like it's such a weird book. Like, and what happened was Ichabod has like almost all either hardcore fans or people that don't care. So like, it kept getting more and more hardcore fans, whereas Katrina was selling just to like a lot of casual readers. But like the people that love Ichabod was like, I love Ichabod. But then like that is a cap, or there's like, it's too violent, or like there's all these containers that just people are like, I don't read things that are that bloody, that violent, starring male characters. It's about a psychopath. I had a bunch of people be like, I don't read books about mental health or mental illness and stuff.
Really?
So like, yes, I've had a lot of people with mental illness being like, I can't live in that world.
Oh, so they want an escape rather than a book about what they go through.
Yeah, like both sides. You have like, I don't want to read about mental illness, and like I don't want to read about like something that's too close to home.
I got it. Okay. Yeah.
So you just have to be, and like this is a big, just like you have to at some point as a creator understand it's not about the project. It's not about you. It's about the project. And like sometimes you've just taken a project as far as you can go, whether it's Cthulhu when you just have nothing left in the tank and someone else takes over, or it's Ichabod where just like the audience seems to have like, or maybe what the audience needs is just a chance to digest the whole 4 volumes. And maybe someone will read the 4 volumes and be like, my God, like this is brilliant. And then like there'll be another wave of that. But what happened with Ichabod is like it had its fandom, it ran through its fandom, and then people started talking about it. And then eventually like it grew in popularity. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't even know where this conversation started, but I do know that like you have to like, it only takes one. What I really love about what happened with Thirsty is like, it's the proof that it only takes one to turn it around. Like it takes one project properly marketed, designed, and packaged, and put together to like change the trajectory of like everything that you do. Like it took one Smut Peddler, it took one Thirsty, it took one White Ash to like grow and grow and grow over time. And like everything changes for you. And so many creators are like stuck in this like doom spiral loop of like, no one likes my book, no one likes my book, and no one likes my book. And I'm like, no one likes that book. So it's like, maybe no one likes that book. I can't say if no one likes you, but like this book, and someone's like, man, that book is great. Like no one will read this book, but it's fucking brilliant. But like, and so like you need to go and make something more popular. And so often creators just get stuck, like I said, in this doom spiral of like, my book's not selling. I don't want to sell it. Nobody likes my work. And I've seen so often with like people like Caleb Palmquist, who just like had like middling success after middling success, did modern mythology, and then did Unicorn Vampire Hunter. And you're like boom, like it just exploded. Or like Dave Cook, who like did a middling success after middling success, and then did that like cyberpunk book that like
Killtopia,
like blew the things off of it. And like it's just, again, you need one really well packaged thing, and just because the thing you made at 26 wasn't the thing doesn't mean the one you make at 30 or 32 or 35 or 38 wasn't the thing. The thing about Johnny the Homicidal Maniac is like Invader Zim is his thing. People don't even know about Johnny the Homicidal Maniac for the most part. Like they just want more Invader Zim, and that was like the 5th or 6th or 8th thing that he made.
Yeah. No, it's very, very true. And I think that, you know, the dichotomy between being that creator who wants to do what you want to do and being that publisher who, you know, tries to plan for these moments, who tries to plan for these career changing books is such a challenge. You know, I have been trying to build a publishing schedule that I can have not only repeat the success of Thirsty and Cheeky, but to have other books that do the same in a different vibe or a different genre. And it's very difficult. But my cat's going off. But yeah, it's been really cool watching your trajectory over the years. And, you know, I've always been a major fan of and impressed by the products that you put out, both, you know, the volume of, the quality of, and even the physical product is just beautiful. And I think that you definitely have built something very reliable and sturdy in that regard. And I'm interested to read Ichabod through as an entire body of work and see how it ends. I'm interested to see what you do next. And you do have to go. I saw the comment there, but I want to ask, is there anything else that you want to leave anyone listening with?
Sure. So I would say go and check out the first issue of Ichabod. You can get it for free on the Kickstarter right now.
Oh, nice.
And if you want to sort of see like the creative process, like how it's developed over the years, like I think that every project that I've done, the big projects that I've done, are like great encapsulations of like Ichabod. And then Cthulhu is a great, like, it like was just a feeder directly into Ichabod. Like we literally just made it, big part of it was just a feed back into Ichabod, and like feedback loop was great there. And like one of the ways that you can really increase the longevity of a product is to have another product like Cheeky, Thirsty, Destiny New York that like can feed into like the feedback loop of your main, or one of your main offerings. So like I would say the thing that most people don't know is that Katrina Hates the Dead, which is my probably most popular single graphic novel, is part of a God's Verse Chronicles, which has 11 novels in it. And I'm really very, 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 very proud of how all 11 books now read as like one series, and we're going to be putting that out next year. So it's been a wonderful to see your success as well, and like your rise, and like no one roots for you harder than I root for you, except for maybe except for you and Amy and your family, I'm sure. But like aside from that, like I'm a huge fan of Destiny New York, and I'm just really nice to talk with you. And you can go to my website RUSSELLNOHELTY.com and see all of my previous work, and it is a lot of it.
Yes, and please see in the comments below, you can see a direct link to the Ichabod Kickstarter, which is live right now. I can't wait to get my copy and see the conclusion. I want to ask though, one last question: did I manage to be backer number one?
I don't know. It's possible.
I really want to know. I really tried to be number one. My buddy Armin was trying to be number one on Cheeky, so I wanted to. I saw yours coming up, and I was like, I gotta be number one.
I'm see, and it's that kind of excitement that makes you be like, man, I really love making this book. Like, I really like, I think that it's like a very I think it has like a cult following among creators because it's so odd and it's so like, yes, you were number one. Congratulations, Matt, you were number one.
Dude, I got it.
Nice.
Thanks, man.
Awesome.
Thanks,
buddy.
man. And thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
For sure. And everyone, again, click the link in the comments and support Ichabod. It is awesome, and I think that you will be happy that you've done so.